Okay, moving on. Game Changers podcast. First of all, highly recommend Game Changers podcast for anybody that's interested. Mitch and Blake talking about
Unanimous.
the industry.
Unanimous from this
Awesome.
group.
Lots of anecdotes, lots of OG shit, right? I've been listening really since they started. Great podcast.
Yeah.
Gamecraft, sorry. Great anecdotes from their perspectives on the industry. I generally agree with everything that they're saying. They're kind of like saying the quiet parts out loud a lot of times. And they're very straightforward and matter of fact about their opinion. But it was this latest one, or the one, I think the first or second one this season, this is the third season, that they made this assertion that really got me thinking. I was just kind of in my head all weekend about this thing. So I wanted to bring this to the group and discuss, debate. So Mitch's argument is that the distribution duopoly from Google and Apple caused consumer preferences for high LTV games, right? He views that the distribution mechanism shaped by this duopoly determined what games were introduced to the customers. And that this in turn shaped what players preferred. So what he's contending is that new methods of discovery are now required to create a more vibrant ecosystem with innovation in the space. And they also suggested that Steam is creating the same dynamics on PC. And of course, their solution is their biggest investment, which is Discord, right? So this brings back the Discord thing. So, and generally speaking, obviously he's pushing his own book. So usually I would just ignore it and say, okay, a venture capitalist is pushing his own book because Discord is a solution for the problem on PC and for Steam, right? But I don't know. It just got me really thinking, is this really the reason that we have like basically 4 or 5 genres that dominate this platform? So my assumption has always been that consumer preference came first, right? Players have been deciding what games they want to play, what mechanics they're willing to spend on. And given the high LTV nature of these games and the high spenders, the whale type driven economies, there's only a few mechanics that actually can drive spend. And the whales tend to prefer casino, puzzle, 4X, and RPG games. So general assumption on this is that the whales have been driving the genre preference because that's the only people that are spending money, and that's the only market that really matters in the space. So do you think it's Apple and Google's duopoly that's at fault? So what do you think, Philip?
I don't think they said that the duopoly has changed consumer preferences. And I think that, the wording here is really important. And so the closest I could get when listening to the podcast again, and for those listening at home, this is 4:22 on the timestamp, is that they say there's this race to the highest ROI category, casino, match 3, etc. Because the UA spending required to bring those games to mass market scale forces you out of innovative content into these tried and true play patterns. They talk about it again in 26-17. They say the dark side of free-to-play and IEP started to accelerate the UA and allowed for elastic pricing and whale hunting on the platform. I honestly can't even follow their logic on what they're saying here. Because of course, when you have an LTV that's X number, then UA in a relatively frictionless market, which is what mobile is, you're going to bid up UA to LTV. That's not a dark side of anything. That's just how a market that has very little friction works. Like this has a lot of comparables to perfect competition model in economics. We have a market with very easy exit and entry. We have a market with really lightning fast user acquisition where we can calculate UA and LTV at any moment. I think they totally get this story backwards. This isn't anything about the duopoly or platform incentives. This has always been about user acquisition. This is the story of mobile. It is about user acquisition and distribution. The platforms, exist or not, this wouldn't have happened without them. And they don't provide any explanation for why this doesn't happen on Steam, right?
I'll tell you.
Because they're talking about leaderboards and how leaderboards were this discovery system. And when they took that away, discovery went away. And that leaderboards were really this perverse incentives. But none of this exists on Steam.
Attribution. It's because for the first time ever on mobile, and it's everything you love, is as a marketer, I now have to report on the ROI of the spend that I have. And so everyone got addicted to ROAS and direct attribution before, crush your favorite thing, IDFA. When on mobile, we knew exactly how to go out with a sniper and get that whale and take them down. That created, in a sense, a vicious cycle of performance marketing and UA being, go out and find me more of this. And so that's the piece for me, is this direct attribution that is the link and the cause of the chicken and the egg, is that fact. That does exist on Steam.
But this is what was keeping me up at night, is that it's the nature of free to play and the way people spend on free to play is the reason that this stuff works, right? Apple did everything they could to promote premium games during the early days of Apple ecosystem, right? They showcased them on the stage for all their keynotes. They fucking market the shit out of them on the store, Dude, they even still have fucking editorial on the store trying to showcase these bullshit games. But that's not what resonated. And what I know and everyone else knows or should know in this industry, and I think this may be the disconnect, is that this is not a premium model, right? This is a whale model, right? Where 3 to 4% people convert, and the top 5% of that 3 to 4%, so a fraction of a percent of the people that actually download your game are generating the majority of your revenue, right? And so you really only give a shit about that small group of people that are spending insane amounts of money, right? And so what I'm trying to say is that the mechanics that are built around 4X, casino, puzzle, and RPG are catering to that group, right? So it's irrelevant, the different distribution methods. Frankly, Apple and Google have nothing to do with the distribution methods, all Facebook and AppLovin and others, right, that are doing the performance marketing. But it's the tastes of that audience that's willing to spend is what's driving this business, not the distribution. Distribution has nothing to do with it, except for the fact that they can target these motherfuckers that are spending insane amounts of money. You know what I'm saying? So this is what was keeping me up at night, right?
I think it's a chicken and the egg, because I think you're right. And I think, I'm right. If you don't have the play that allows there to be whales, and then the platform allows you to hunt the whales, downloads have cratered since, the loss of ATT, and how difficult it is to go out and find players. Revenue has been increasing because games have been figuring out more dark arts to get people to spend more.
So if we had all these different alternative distribution mechanisms out there, do you think anything would change in the ecosystem? Would it become more innovative? Would we see new genres? Would we see new innovations at all? No. It's just going to go back to the same thing that people are willing to spend money on, because that's the only people. There's only a few people that are willing to spend money on this free to play at scale, make the model work. Right.
And I have consensus with you on that point, Eric. And I think that's what hurts their argument the most, is that if this duopoly didn't exist, well, would things be that much better? No, we'd still have the same LTV UA game, which is that you have LTVX and you bid up UA up until UA equals LTV. That equation in perfect market still works. I have no idea what they're talking about here.
Yeah. So a Discord is not a solution. It's just going to be another part of the problem, right? In theory,
just another
in terms of
innovation.
Channel.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just another acquisition channel.
Okay.
Yeah,
got it.
Agree.
This is what the argument was killing me, was that I was like, okay, wait a minute. Maybe this is reinforcing these models and these systems that are, extracting as much money as possible from the whales, right? Like, if the UA environment is the one that's actually causing that, that's interesting. But I think it's just the player preference of those that really are willing to spend, right? Until player preference changes.
It's even the inverse of what they mentioned, right? Like, if we were talking about, would things be different if there were alternative distribution sources? Well, yeah, we'd go back to a pre-ATT world. Like, really, Mitch and Blake should be blaming Apple and Google for the ATT situation. It's about distribution. That's what caused all this fuckery when we talk about fake ads. But they're trying to say, like, free-to-play IEP and loot boxes are the dark side. No. Fake ads and the modern state of mobile user acquisition is the dark side. And that was caused by the duopoly. But ATT is the problem here, not this other shit they're trying to mention. This always existed. I have no idea what they're talking
about.
That's
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
All right.
There is the play into the dopamine. It's why casinos and gambling have addicts. And so I do think that games have been adopting more of those dark mechanics.
So my other counter to their argument is that, look, the tastes and the genres that are doing well on console and PC are still hugely, like 85% of the traffic is from games that have existed. So my other point is that PC and console is in the same situation, right? They've matured to a level in which 85% of the use base is using the same type of genres, the same games that have been existing forever, right? So I would argue that additional ways of finding these customers is not going to change what consumers are preferring, right? Even on console and PC, right? Like, the nature of the platform itself is determining what genres do well. It's not a question of discovery and distribution. And so Discord is not going to help that either, right? We're not going to see more innovation on the space because Discord comes on, because the preferences of the consumer have already been stated until we have a new platform.
The causal arrow goes both ways, right? So let's take a look at hybrid casual. Do you think hybrid casual exists as a consumer preference or as a function? Obviously, at some level it does. But do you think hybrid casual is more of a function of institutional incentives, or do you think that's more of a function of consumer preference?
Both.
In
I
that
have
case,
a
it
hard
would be both.
time, disentangling these two things because of the motivations of the ad system. And hyper casual makes money off of the 5 ads that they show you right away. They shove it in front of your face everywhere you are because everything's an ad platform, as you like to say. They're on TikTok, they're on social. Oh, this cute little time waster game looks really fun. It looks really simple for me to pick up and play. I want to give it a shot.
I
And
guess
same thing with squad RPG, right? Like, consumer preferences may be for squad RPGs, but they've been in decline because the user acquisition isn't there anymore, and they haven't been able to pivot to the same fake UA strategies that 4X does, right? 4X would have been killed if they didn't pivot to this, right? So UA and distribution does play a large role in what genres succeed and which ones don't.
Yeah, which is why, and Crest pointed this out, if you look at all of the art styles on 4X games that are working, what is working? Whiteout Survival, Last War, King Shot looks like a ripoff of an art style of Supercell. There's a massive 4X monetization machine behind these more approachable art styles. And that's like a lot of the thesis of why Supercell games have worked so much is they have this really fun, casual, appealing brand on top of a cash machine.
my point again is that any new distribution, it has nothing to do with distribution, right? It has to do with consumer preference from a spending perspective. And so, yes, they're making more casual games, but the underlying mechanics of these games are identical almost to the older 4X games. They're just casting a broader net and bringing these whales in, right?
But I do think that there was innovation. I mean, this hybrid nature of I'm going to put a very simple mechanic on top of hybrid casual. Like that is oddly an innovation.
All right, fine. Innovation.
I think they're intertwined.
Yes. I was a little disappointed, I'll be honest, at this particular podcast because I think it didn't make sense what he was talking about. I don't think Discord is a solution. It's just going to perpetuate the problem. There's no innovation on gameplay that's going to happen because Discord is a new distribution channel. I'm just saying that. Like, it is just going to be the same situation as all these games are the same games that they were like 10 years ago in terms of the same mechanics that are monetizing, these same gotcha energy, power creep, all these same things are going to be the same thing making money of this small percentage. And we're talking about millions of people in the US that actually spend money like fucking drunken sailors on these games. That's the audience. And that's what you're optimizing against.
I actually think they're correct in until there is a new distribution model that allows new creative and innovation to flourish, we are stuck in the system that we are in today. Discord, what we talked about today, it's an ad platform. I don't know what that platform is as a place for new games to kind of flourish and live. I mean, I was there at the beginning of mobile where I was selling Scrabble for $6.99. And then I had to go in front of Hasbro and be like, hey, we're going to make more money if we take Scrabble for free. And, the CEO was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what do you mean? What is free to play? That is because of the nature of the platform and because everything's an ad network. You have to go, it's scale. That's what this distribution model lent us. If there is a new distribution model that pops up, I do think that would allow for innovation of gameplay to flourish depending on what that is.
This is what got me really kind of confused. I don't think it changes one thing. I don't think MOBAs are all of a sudden going to be successful on mobile in the West because we have new distribution mechanisms.
I didn't say that.
I'm just saying in general, the consumer that's spending money on these games, like these lunatics that are spending tens of thousands of dollars, are not spending it on MOBAs with cosmetic economies. Like that's just, there's not a broad group of people spending on free to play to justify these type of gameplay mechanics that you're talking about, right? Or these new genres or new gameplay mechanics. That's just not the nature of the mobile free to play system, period, right? Regardless of distribution. Let's say Apple gets rid of the 30%.
Yeah.
Right. ATT comes back, right? Because they get nothing's going to change.
The point is that distribution affected what genre succeeded and which ones failed, right? That's our central point of disagreement. You think consumer preferences drive everything. And I would argue, that does drive a lot, but user acquisition is a really important part of finding an audience. And that helps give life to mechanics that would not otherwise exist because they can find an audience that is small enough when you have targeting. When you don't have targeting, this is your words, Eric. You remember you had to go casual. You had to go casual on the front end to get people into the funnel, right? Yeah. So it's harder to find specific
I'm not
markets.
I'm talking about what people are spending money on, not what people are downloading and playing.
How would you explain the decline in squad RPG revenue? In Asia, they're shitting out these AAA bajillion dollar. We're talking about ZZ. MiHoYo?
Zenla's, yeah.
No, but
MiHoYo.
those are not here
Lilith.
to the West, the collection mechanic type games. They haven't innovated on the games that have done well, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes and Marvel Strike Force. Like there hasn't been a new game in that category that has taken to capture the hearts and minds of that audience. And I think a lot of those likely the spenders are all moving back to 4X. Is kind of what it looks like. Like those are capturing the same, maybe that same whale audience.
Isn't that because 4X is now adding character collections inside?
Right.
And so
exactly.
4X is like the ultimate
Shut up, Breaking Bad.
hybrid. It's like, but seriously, like when I was playing Whiteout Survival, I was like, oh my God, there is like old school squad RPG character collection involved in this, just like everything else, just like the mini games, just like I felt like when I was playing Whiteout, and it's been a while, I'm sure when we look at King Shot and all these other, like they are now shoving everything into these game experiences that keep you involved in collecting and continuing your collection. That's where I feel like there has been innovation and changes in gameplay because of the distribution model pushing that. I don't think we love where it's going because it, in a sense, like we hate, hyper casual because it was, how do I get you to stay for 30 minutes so I can show you 10 ads and monetize you off platform, which I think we, as people that love games, I think we felt gross about what that was.
My whole thing is that because the whales constitute the majority of the revenue on the App Store, full stop, like it's the games and genres that cater to that audience, despite whatever fucking distribution mechanism that you have, whether it's, fucking Discord or anything else, that will see success in the marketplace, right?
So
you don't cater to that audience that's willing to spend $10,000 a year on a game, it's over.
Okay, well, two things. One is I think there are a lot of companies that made a lot of money on ads, and we won't know that because Sensor Tower has, that's not exactly what shows up. However, two, what is going to change that we need to keep an eye on, and I know you love and hate this topic, is web shops. As I talk to more people that have mostly mid-core games that mostly service the whales, to exactly what you're saying, those people are moving off platform to these web shops. In some cases, as we've all heard, 40% of game revenue can come from a web shop that is no longer being tracked in what we are seeing, in a sense, on Sensor Tower. And so I'm actually wondering, are we losing sight of actually what's really going on in the industry?
That actually reinforces my point, right? Because the people that are moving over are the whales that are spending insane amounts of money, right? And they're still spending on the same games that they spent on 10 years ago.
Isn't that a distribution innovation?
That's actually the opposite of innovation. That's like sticking with exactly the games that are doing well now. This is my point. It's like you have a new distribution mechanism. That's not going to improve discovery and capture new audiences and capture new gameplay dynamics.
I mean, hyper casual is one example. Squad RPG is another. The last one I'd probably put is like the failure of the design home genre to launch. I think could have been a sacrificial lamb of ATT as well. Like I really thought design home and that genre would expand, and I think ATT probably played a big role in stunting the success of products like Redecor as another example.
Well, no, the LTVs were not high enough to justify the spend, right?
You can always lower CPI. You can always lower CPI, right? I mean, that's the flip side, right? That's what could have made this genre viable, right? If you can find an audience, CPIs can be lower and you can still hold LTV constant and your genre can persist.
That makes sense to me, right? Is that if we did have ways of capturing those audiences that are lower, your assumption is that if without AT&T, we could have actually had lower CPIs to grow the design home audience?
I think it's one example, and it's speculation on my part. I think there's a million things on Redecor we could talk about, but that's something I've always been curious is about why this genre didn't take off. It's a very particular market, and I think we need highly targeted creative to be able to continue to have that genre really succeed. And it hasn't, right? It's been design home, and design home's been kind of on a decline for a really long time.
I mean, isn't it exactly what you're saying is there's nothing to spend money on for whales in those kinds of games?
There's a ton of things to spend money on. Not only that, you have e-commerce in those products too, which is also a really nice back end.
I would argue it the other way.
Yeah.
It's like the depth of spend is not there to justify the spending to find this
Correct.
audience, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Versus spending the same amount of money and building the same type of game as a 4X game and capturing that audience, right? So the ROAS calc is just not there for design home versus 4X games.
I'm interested in that as a topic because you would imagine that how do so many people spend so much money on stupid puzzle games, which I am one of those people. I play the shit out of Royal Match and Royal Kingdom. I mean, for me, it's a fidget toy, but how do people spend money on like more lives, but not like I want to decorate my room? Is it because of the play pattern? Is it? I don't know.
Because it's a more
just
particular audience. Match 3 is a very. I mean, people will use Match 3. They'll front end their creative with Match 3. Like AFK Journey had a freaking Match 3 game that you had to play when you downloaded a squad RPG. Right? It's a much more broad appeal genre than redecor or design home.
Yeah. So then that's the problem. Again, it goes to like there is no innovation on the platform because it's all going to the crest to what you're saying, the top 3 things that are working on. Maybe we're all, I don't know.
The whole point of targeting, right? Just put aside mobile for a second. But the whole revolution of Facebook was that you could do hyper targeted things, which gave rise to like all these PCG companies that are making like, particular shaving products or selling you razors, whatever it may be. But that wasn't necessarily a product of consumer preference. Obviously, the latent consumer preference was there, else it wouldn't sell. There has to be demand at some point. But what unlocked that possibility was being able to find these particular audience because hyper-targeting exists. We wouldn't have had all those PCG companies if we didn't have Facebook. And I think you can make the same parallels stick here. Like there is a back and forth causal relationship between the two. All right, we got to fucking wrap this up.
All right, everyone. Hope you enjoyed our debate. I think actually Mitch and or Blake is coming on a podcast with Mishka. I wish we could all be there.